Hi everyone, this is Krista Moore with The Krista Moore Show, and I'm excited to welcome you to 2020, and this is our first show of the year. This show is brought to you by K-Coaching as a new way to learn from industry experts or thought leaders as they share their growth ideas and success stories. I always like to find great guests that align to my philosophies of Race to Amazing to help you get on the fast track to your success. And in this case, today's topic is all about personal branding. And I have the expert on that to share with you today. So I'd like to welcome our special guest, Elyse Archer. Elyse, are you there?
I am here. It's so good to be here with you, everyone, today. And Krista, thank you so much for having me.
Great, and you are considered the personal brand specialist, so anxious to hear your thoughts and ideas on how individuals can start thinking about their personal brand, as well as we have lots of companies on the line today that are wondering how to gain the attention of more of their customers and to really attract the audience that they want. Yeah. So I'd love for you to give us a little background, tell us about yourself, and then we'll go ahead and dive into the subject.
Sure, absolutely. Well, you know, in the pre-chat, we were talking a little bit about just some of my background and in college, how I always thought I was going to go into sales. So in college, even though I was fortunate to have my school paid for, I was still like, I always wanted to work, and I always loved the idea of, you know, entrepreneurship and working for myself. So I worked 5 jobs at one time while I was in school and kind of fell in love with like the hustle and grind of that, and went into corporate doing digital marketing sales and built a very successful career in the marketing space in my early 20s, and then really started to feel the call and the pull to go out on my own and kind of experience life as an entrepreneur and do something bigger and more purposeful. I'd kind of, you know, accumulated the accolades, the money. I had done everything I thought I was supposed to do to be happy and feel successful, but I felt called to go out and try to make a bigger impact in people's lives. So in my late 20s, I left corporate. I decided I was going to go into sales coaching, and I had one client who had paid me $300 and 6 months worth of savings to my name. Now, I do not recommend this for anyone who's listening, who's considering a side hustle and branching out. It's probably not the most strategic way to do it, but because I had such a short runway to really make it work, all that I knew was that I had to get really, really, I would say, intentional and aggressive about promoting myself as a sales coach. And so I did all sorts of different stuff. I had a local networking group. I did a lot of social media. The thing that worked best was I would put out like daily thought leadership videos and content, just sharing ideas that people could use to grow their sales. And very quickly within the first year, I was able to build a 6-figure coaching business, because I think not necessarily because I was the best sales coach, although I think I was decent at it, but it was because I was known. And so I spent several years doing that, and actually became a partner in an international sales coaching company. And then about 18 months ago, a number of my colleagues and I from that company, we exited and we formed this company called Brand Builders Group, which is very specifically in the personal branding space. And it's all about helping individuals develop influential reputations in their space so that they can be a magnet, not a megaphone. So it's like your ideal clients are coming to you, they've heard about you, they want to work with you, which is, I think, a fun way to do business. And that was what I experienced when I started really promoting myself as a coach early on. And so now I get to help everyone from people just starting off to some much bigger entrepreneurs and leaders build their personal brands, and it's been a blast.
That's great. And it's almost like you've done it for yourself, and this system that you teach and really embrace and work with your clients is something that you've proven, you know, through doing it yourself. I think when we met for the first time was maybe a year ago or so, maybe even right after you started your own business, when we were in that conference in Atlanta.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think it was maybe a year and a half ago, something like that.
And then, you know, when you talk about branding and the magnet part of that, I was attracted to you and what you were representing and what you were all about. So whatever you're doing, it's working. And then I follow you socially, and I enjoy the podcast that you're doing as well. So congratulations on your own business.
Thank you.
And, yeah, so for our audience today, I'd like for them to leave with some really great tips, techniques, really thoughts around personal branding, why it is kind of a hot topic today, and why it's important to understand our brand to be able to make the, attract the right customers and really have impact in the world.
Yeah.
So why don't you start out by just telling us what exactly is personal branding and why is it such a buzzword today?
Yeah, it's a great question, Kristen. I think for those of you listening, it's like you've probably heard this term used over maybe the past, I'd say 5 years. It's become more popular, but I think today people are really talking about it more and more. And I think it's really simple. I think a personal brand is simply what other people think of when they think of you. And so whether you have spent a lot of time or no time on defining it, owning it, articulating it, you have one. And it's really, I think it boils down to it's your reputation. At the end of the day, if we're just going to simplify it and kind of take away that buzzword, it's your reputation. And I think it's an interesting time to be in business because more than ever, we're seeing the rise of micro-influencers and people really, stepping out as being the face of their company. And I will say this doesn't apply to everyone. There are certain people where it's like they don't really want to be the face of their company. And so I think I'll still share some branding tips and ideas that you can apply to your corporate brand, but more and more for entrepreneurs, for consultants, for sales professionals, for the people who are the face of their company, it is critical that you are crystal clear on what your brand is, what you want people to think of when they think of you, because at the end of the day, reputation is always going to precede revenue. So if you have aggressive revenue goals, if you are, if you're looking, as we film this, it's the beginning of the new year, you probably set new revenue goals, you're excited about growing your business, but if you didn't hit your goals last year, I think the biggest problem is it's not necessarily a revenue problem, it's a reputation problem. And that is the key. That's the kind of the linchpin of all of this.
That's interesting in terms of saying it that way. Reputation is really how other people see you, perceive you, and certainly you can earn a reputation one way or the other. And I'm wondering how you would, let's say, earn a brand. When I think about a brand, to me is unique.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's so noisy out there, and there's a lot of coaches, there's a lot of trainers, there's a lot of small business owners, there's a lot of companies doing the same thing. So creating a reputation or a brand for being the best at that, what are some thoughts that you put into creating that uniqueness?
Yeah, it's a good question, and I'll share this, and then I'll share some thoughts on that. I actually learned a lot about this from one of our clients, a guy named Lewis Howes, who's a podcaster, a speaker, and author. Mm-hmm. And I think he's done such a good job. For any of you who know him, you'll recognize this, but if not, I'd say go check him out and look him up online and see what he's done with his brand. One of the things that he taught me that really kind of sat with me was how intentional celebrities are about crafting the brand that they put out into the world. And mm-hmm. It's not by accident. They're very intentional about all of the images that you see, all of the photography of them that you see. Now, granted, there's paparazzi who are taking the terrible photos on the beach, and that's just part of the gig, but they're very, very intentional about their image, about their messaging. And he said that's a lot of what he attributes to, in the early days, what helped make him successful. Mm-hmm. But when it comes to your brand, I think there's several key elements, but when I'm working with clients on building out what their brand is going to be, we always start with getting like a blueprint. And I think one of the mistakes people make with their branding and trying to figure out and putting their brand out into the world is they kind of approach it like they're building a house, but without a blueprint. So they say, okay, I need a brand. So I need a logo, I need a website, I need some
this logo.
Mm-hmm. Colors, exactly. And actually, as we speak, I have a client downstairs who we're working with, and she spent a lot of money building all of that out without necessarily having some of the foundational pieces first.
Yeah, and so when we talk about that blueprint, I have seen and read and heard about your 6 questions that you use with a lot of your clients to help them be thinking about who their ideal client is, who do they want to serve, what is their uniqueness. And I thought that if we could walk through those 6 questions, at least at a high level, then everyone on the line today can kind of, be taking some notes and maybe be able to start really working on their own personal brand. And I want to pause for a moment too, because we often have business owners and sales leaders and sales reps on the call. And as a sales professional, if you're working for someone else, that brand, that reputation is what's going to get you revenue. And so I don't want to discount that it's not like you have to have your own business to create your own brand.
I 100% agree, and actually I love working with salespeople because the business owner's brand will help, but then also it's your brand, because at the end of the day, people are doing business with you, and as salespeople, there's so many opportunities today to create great content for LinkedIn, or just share ideas that help people online, and you can build a really strong brand that attracts clients to you who want to work specifically with you. So I love that.
It's a big deal, I think, when salespeople take the initiative and realize that they are, I call it a smarketer, like sales and marketing combined, because they're more than just a salesperson. They've got to market themselves along with the products and services that they sell.
Exactly. Exactly. Yeah. So go ahead.
I was going to say, why don't we walk through the 6 questions and kind of talk through those a little bit?
Yeah, I love. Sure, I love this conversation. And at the end of the day, one of the things you said, Krista, that's so important is figuring out what your uniqueness is. And today, I think more than ever, Sally Hogshead has a great quote about this. She says, different is better than better. So if you're trying to build a brand that rises above the noise, the first thing you've got to figure out is how are you different and how are you unique? And there's an exercise we call the brand DNA Helix, which helps you uncover what your own unique, we call it your brand DNA is. And so the 6 questions, I'll share them with you now. The first one, and the most important, is what problem do you solve? And this is so important because your personal brand is actually not about you at all. It is about the problem that you solve for other people, and this is critical to get clear on early on. We like to get it down to a one-word problem, and there's some great examples of people who do this really, really well. Think about like Dave Ramsey and the problem of debt. The man has built a massive brand where if I'm talking to my friend and I say, hey, my husband and we're ready to get out of debt, we're ready to pay off our mortgage, they're probably going to say, you need to go check out Financial Peace University. You need to go check out Dave Ramsey. Or even another example is Brene Brown and the problem of shame. And so people are going to buy solutions to problems at the end of the day. And so you need to be able to articulate and also market what is that problem that you are going to solve for the world. Now, the balancing question to this is, well, what are you passionate about? This is the second question. What are you passionate about? Think about what could you talk about forever and not get sick of? What could you write a book about? It could be what lights you up. It can also be what ticks you off. But those 2 questions combined help us figure out, okay, what do you want to talk about? What do you want your brand to be about? The next set of 2 questions is about, well, what are you qualified to talk about? Because it can sometimes be different. So we look at here. The first is, what are you an expert in? So think about this kind of like your book smarts. It can be, what have you studied? What do you have a degree in? What do you read about a lot? What do you have certification?
Your education and experience that is different perhaps than someone else's.
Exactly. But then the balancing question to that is, what have you earned the right to talk about? So this is more, this is kind of, or so like, what do you have results in? This is more the street cred, because as I'm sure you've seen, there are plenty of people online teaching you how to become an internet millionaire, and they've never done it themselves, and you're looking at the photos.
And I don't know if I'm just feeling old, but it cracks me up. I get these messages from people that I don't know in LinkedIn that are asking me if I need leads or am I looking for more clients, and there are these experts in finding clients for coaches or whatever, and I'm thinking, you're 12, like what do you mean? Yeah. So that's just my own mindset sometimes when I see some brand, they're branding themselves as something that they're truly not an expert in, so I think they missed that question.
Yeah, and it's a great point. And, Dave Avrin has a great quote, and I'm not going to remember the full quote, but he talks about, teach what you've earned the right to teach. Speak about what you've earned the right to talk about. And I think whether you're 12 and building your personal brand or whether you're 70 and 80 and doing this now for yourself, there are things in each of our lives that are challenges we've overcome, or things that are our superpower, things we do really well that other people think is really hard, results we've gotten in our own life or in lives of our clients. So there's always something there, but it's going to be a lot easier to build a really powerful brand when you can come from a place of strength and say, not only do I know academically how to do this, but I've done it.
You know what's interesting too is, because we talked a little about this in our pre-chat, but these are tough questions for people. I mean, when you think about it, it's not just something that's going to come to their mind. And when we were talking about the 10-year-old self and that process of self-discovery that we teach, it's kind of like going back to when you were a child and what did you dream of and what were your strengths and what did you want to be when you grew up. And those types of discovery questions can help you really get clarity on that, right? Yeah. And then there's a second part of our program, which is what we call the lifeline, and you probably do this with your clients where you're saying, okay, what are those experiences, those highs and lows? When were you at your happiest? And what would you do every day if you didn't get paid? And those kinds of things. But so these 6 questions are wonderful. I'm wondering if there's people on the line going, well, I've been asking myself this same question forever. I can't figure it out. What advice would you give them?
Yeah, I think with your personal brand, part of why it can be hard to figure this out is that you're just so close to it, you don't see it. And so even if you get like a friend who knows you really well to go through these questions with you, I think I work with so many brilliant marketers where they market other people, other companies all day long for their job, and they're the best in the world at it. And then when it comes time to do it for themselves, they're just so close to it. Like, we miss our own brilliance. We miss the things that make us special and unique because they're so commonplace to us. So have somebody else who can reflect with you go through these. I think there's a lot of power in that.
I was just thinking of an exercise that I did at a conference last year that was part of self-discovery, and you would use the term superpower, like what's your superpower? And I had people text their friends and family and coworkers, what is my superpower? And then collect that. And it was really, it was amazing because the responses that they were getting back from their community and their friends and family all had a common theme to them. Others were seeing them a certain way, that they did have a certain superpower or uniqueness or differentiator that was powerful. And it was neat because I think some people just need to be reminded. It's inspiring, and it gives them confidence that they can maybe take this superpower and do something with it.
Yeah, and I love that because I think for each of us, we take for granted what we're really good at and we don't see it. So just to know that and to get that feedback and, like you said, to hear the commonality, what people say, and then you can go to market with that and you can promote yourself, whether in a job interview, working with a customer, in your marketing on your website. Like, that is part of what you should be marketing as your brand. There's a lot of genius in that. So I love that.
That's cool. So I think we got to question 4.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Yep. So the second is questions 3 and 4 about research and results. That's like, what are you qualified to talk about? And then the final set of 2 questions is, how are you going to make money? What's your business model going to be? Mm-hmm. And some people come in. Exactly. Mm-hmm. And I think, it's interesting because I would say my clients are kind of split half and half, where half of them have a pre-existing business model and they're just looking to elevate their brand and drive more leads for it. And then there are others who are maybe already doing something, but they want to pivot and build a brand in a new space, or maybe they have no idea what it's going to be and they need to figure that out. So regardless, you usually get some really good ideas for how you can monetize with these questions. So the first question is, what would people buy from you? What would people buy from you? And we run, we have a series, there's a series of 5 different kind of buckets or categories where you can monetize your personal brand, ways you can make money, revenue streams you can make money through your personal brand, and we call them the paids. So the 5 ways you can get paid. So there's products, so think about like books, merchandise, etc. There's ads and affiliates. So if you build a big enough audience, other people may want to pay to get in front of that audience and do
That's right.
an affiliate deal with you, or run ads to be on your show. That can be a great model if you have high volume. There's I, which is information. So think about basically you packaging up all the information you have and then sending it out to the masses. So that can be courses, membership site, that could be a certification program. There's D, which is deals. So think about brand deals. And then the final one is S, which is service. So you as a service, and this is probably where most people start, is something, it's a time for money exchange, but it's also very low-hanging fruit usually. So it can be coaching, consulting, speaking, training, something that requires you to be there to make money. But any of those can work, and a lot of times you may want to look at in the next 12 months what's going to make the most sense, but then also long term, especially if I want to get out of the time for money exchange, you know, maybe there's another way I can make money off of this.
Yeah. So let's talk about that monetizing the personal brand moment. I would imagine there's a lot of maybe business strategy or strategic planning around that to know where your ideal customer is, how to attract them, where are they spending their time, how can you make yourself visible to them. Talk about that a little bit if you would.
Sure. So we actually do a little bit of a reverse process from what I would say most people do. So I think most people, when they're mapping out their brand, their audience, their targets, they'll figure out core target audience first, and then they'll figure out, okay, what's the business model that's going to suit them. We actually do it the opposite. So we look at, based upon what you want to talk about and what you're qualified to talk about, then we look at, well, what would people buy based upon those categories? And we also look at how do you want to be spending your time, and that helps to inform who the audience is, because somebody who's going to buy a $10,000 coaching program is going to be a different customer than someone who's going to buy a $10 ebook typically.
Yeah,
so we want to get clarity first on the money.
I really like the approach, and I felt the difference at the beginning of our conversation, because your first question wasn't about who your ideal customer is.
Yeah.
And normally in some type of, you know, trying to understand someone's brand or marketing plan, it's always like, well, who's the target audience? What's your niche? And you're looking at it backwards, and I like it because that niche could change. And so it's more about being of service and providing your brand, your talents, your uniqueness, and then figuring out, well, who wants that? Who wants what I have, and who's willing to pay me for it?
Yeah, and the customer, the core target audience, we actually move into that after this brand helix, but it kind of uncovers itself. You know, like even I shared with you, we've got a client downstairs right now who we're doing some work with, and she's shifting her message from customer experience to more of leadership. And so she knew she wanted to have this shift. She wasn't sure exactly who she was going to be speaking to yet, but we went through this exercise, and it was like, okay, this is very clear that you're shifting from this person to it's the C-suite, and then we kind of mapped out like, okay, who's the CEO who you're talking to, where are they? But it was all based upon the message that she was feeling called to share and what her price point's going to be, how does she want to spend her time, and that informed who the audience was.
That's interesting, because we're talking about branding, but I think everyone kind of, maybe I'm just speaking for myself because I'm at a real pivotal branding point. And I've gone through that throughout my career. You know, when I left corporate America and then started my own business and had to create my own brand around that, well, I've had it for 16 years, and now I want to do something else. And I have more of a message to get out to a broader audience. So I'm at a place where I need to figure out, how am I going to rebrand without like leaving people behind? You know, I don't want to have to start over again or create a brand new audience from scratch, because that doesn't seem right. What are your thoughts on rebranding? Any advice you might give me?
Yeah, well, it's a hot topic around the brand builders headquarters, because when we all left the sales world 18 months ago, and when we left behind everything that we had built in terms of our brand, and it was just part of our deal when we left that any content, any videos, it was gone. It wasn't ours. And so what we did was, it was a very like sharp left turn, kind of abandon everything and rebuild from scratch.
Yeah.
if you don't have to do that, I don't recommend it, because
Yeah.
it's possible, but it's hard and it takes a while. And I
I don't
think,
want to work that hard.
yeah, yeah, and you've put in so much work to what you already have. I think going through this process and even asking some of these questions, you'll probably uncover through lines between what you've been talking about and what you want to talk about. And a lot of times there's a way to, assuming it's still of service to the same audience, there's a way to kind of guide your audience along this journey with you. And I think part of it is first getting a lot of clarity on what's the new brand, what are the benefits to them, how does it apply to them, and then you bring them along for the journey. So I wouldn't share a whole lot until you're totally clear on what that new rebrand is and what it's going to be and why it's going to be helpful to them. But once you are, it's like you can share this and invite them. It's almost like inviting people to a party. I've got this great new thing.
Yeah.
This is who it's for. I think you're going to love it if XYZ is going on. And your diehards, the people who really love you, the people who this resonates with, they're going to follow you. They're going to go with you here.
Yeah.
So I think there's a graceful way to do it, and I don't think you have to do that sharp left turn if you don't have to.
Yeah. Well, and I took up a few minutes of self-serving needs, so I appreciate that. We have a question coming in, so we're going to take a look at that question. But why don't you go ahead and tell us a little bit more about how creating a personal brand can really build freedom for many people, many businesses.
Yeah, well, I think today more than ever, people are following people more than they follow companies. And so if you just think about when you're on social media and what stops you from kind of scrolling, I think it's the face of someone that captures your attention. And I think whether you are a solopreneur, a salesperson, or the head of an organization, you being known and establishing trust and people being able to build a relationship with you at scale is going to drive more leads. It's going to drive more opportunities. I'm a huge fan of inbound whenever I can get it versus outbound. And I think any organization, any individual that focuses on building a strong reputation in their space, they're going to see a lift in the inbound opportunities and leads they get. And
Yeah.
it's also your legacy. At the end of the day, that's going to follow you everywhere, no matter what company you're at, no matter what you're selling or what you're doing. Being intentional about your brand it's kind of career security for life, because if you're known, if people trust you, if they love you, they're going to be interested in what you're doing, and you're going to be relevant. So,
yeah. Well, and thinking too, one of the questions that we got is really a great one. Is so at what point do you know that your branding is where it needs to be, to take it out and to start marketing it?
Yeah, that's a really good question. So I'll try to be brief because I know we're coming up on time, but fabulous question. When I work with clients, it's a 4-phase process, and I would recommend for anyone kind of trying to follow this process will help you. The first thing you need to do is you need to get really clear on what your brand DNA is. So having total clarity on the problem you solve, your message about how to solve it, your primary business model, who you're going to serve with it as well, so who's your audience, and your positioning, why you. Once you're clear on that, then the second phase, that's kind of like the blueprint for the house. The second phase is kind of like building the house. So I would recommend before you do a big brand launch and really start promoting and putting money into ads or doing a ton of social content, get your house in order. So you want to have a website that clearly articulates who you are and how you serve. This is key. You want to have funnels built where when I come to your website, I hear about you on social media, I can immediately see, here's how I can get on your email list. Here's how I can learn more about what you do. Here's how I can buy from you. You want to have your social media strategy in place and make sure that once you do this launch, once you bring this out into the world, that you're going to be able to be consistent with what you're doing. So some of that is having the right team members in place. Is it going to be you? Is it going to be somebody else? But having your strategy where at the end of the day, part of building a strong brand is about becoming a part of someone's daily routine. And so people need to know, when can they expect content from you? Like, Krista, you're so good with the show, like consistency in the show, letting people know, when can they get in touch with you? When can they expect content from you? The more you can become a part of somebody's routine and they start to kind of build you into the fabric of their life, the more you're going to build longevity, you're going to build an audience, you're going to build a following, and you're going to build a really loyal customer base. So I would say having those two phases or those two processes in place first, before you do your launch, you're going to have a lot of success with it.
Yeah, and a lot of digital marketers will say how important it is to kind of build that database, right? Like
Mhm.
you've got to be able to, whether it's you're already building a database through email or whether you're building a database through social, that database needs to be, needs to be in play so that you've got someone to market and sell your brand to.
It does, and I would say get people off of social and onto your email list, because all it takes is one algorithm change on whatever platform you're relying on, where all of a sudden you go from 10,000 people seeing your stuff to 100 people seeing your stuff. You don't want to have to rely on the platforms to have access to your people, so that's a key piece of that strategy, as well as how are you
Well,
going to get people off of
that's a
social
great
onto your
point.
email list.
Great point, because many people are thinking that email, marketing is dying, and anyone that's doing branding or marketing will tell you that that's not the case. I mean, you really need to have the email list.
Mm-hmm.
Someone did ask a question. They felt like they might have missed the sixth question of the six that you were sharing to help discover uniqueness. So if you don't mind just sharing that for a moment and then wrap it up.
Yeah, great question, because they did miss it because we didn't talk about it. So I'm glad they asked.
Wait, Michelle, you are so on. You would be the one to catch that we missed the sixth question.
I love it. So the sixth question is, what business do I want to be in? So a lot of people, and I know for myself, probably for you as well, time, freedom, and leverage is more important than ever. And so balancing what would people buy from you with what business do you want to be in, and how do you actually want to spend your time is really critical. The life of a speaker who's on the road 100 times a year is very different from the life of a digital entrepreneur. And so there's these 5 elements we call the dares that if you can bake into your business model, you're probably not going to get all of them, but if you can get some of them, it's going to give you more time freedom. So with anything that you're doing and selling, we look at, is it digital? Is it automated? Is it recurring? Is it evergreen? And is it scalable? And the more of those you can build into your business model, the more time freedom you're going to have. So, Michelle, I'm glad you asked that question, because I think that one is really important. And yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, so, we are running out of time, but this was really content rich, and I look forward to re-listening to it myself, because I just think that I could certainly learn a lot, as well as I know that individuals on the line today are wishing that someone else was in the room hearing it, and we'll make the recording available shortly after this show. So you can share it with your community as well. Elyse, I appreciate that. It's okay if I share your contact information, right? And
Please.
if anyone wants to reach out to you, there's an easy way to do that, as well as stay connected to you socially. But I think you have an offer that you want to share if anyone's interested in diving deeper into personal branding.
Yeah, absolutely. So we have a free course that we created that's a much deeper dive into some of those 6 questions in the brand helix, and really helps you uncover your uniqueness and what your personal brand is. So it's called First Step to Famous, and you can get it at ea.brandbuildersgroup.com. So it's just my initials. It's ea.brandbuildersgroup.com. It's free. You can get it. I think you're getting a lot of great ideas from it. And please connect with me on social. I'm at Elyse Archer everywhere. And then you've got my website listed here as well. So I would love to connect with you. And
I'm glad you got the website. Your name is the website. That's not easy.
Yeah, well, when you have a weird name like Elyse Archer, it wasn't as hard, but I bet for you it could be.
Yeah, well, it's funny because Krista Moore's taken, and since I've discovered her, and we're friends, and she's in Canada. Yeah. One day I'm gonna ask her if I could buy that URL off of her.
It's only a matter of time. Stay close to her.
Well, thank you so much, Elyse. I really appreciate the time that you spent here today, and I look forward to staying in touch with you and following your career, and also how well Brand Builders is doing. So take care.
Thank you so much. It's been a pleasure.
And to everyone, please make sure that you catch the Krista Moore Show every Wednesday, 2 o'clock Eastern Time, as we go live, helping you get on the fast track to your sales success. Take care. Thanks.